Okay, this tutorial is going to demonstrate how to create a language chooser for a web page. You may have seen these before. I'll just show you the working example of it here. We've got a language option here and a drop down menu. We can click a selection of languages, so I'm going to say let's choose German. Okay, and you can see that text is changed to German. Let's say English now, and it's changed again. Back to Spanish, and it's changed again. So it's quite an effective way to let your users change the language. This by all means isn't a language translator. It's you need to know the language that you're going to express for each option. So I know English and German, but I don't know Spanish. This was, just for an example. If we come into the code, you can see that I've got an English, German and Spanish page for each language, and we need variables for where we're going to place the text on the page. So basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting variables echoing out this first and second variable and more if you need it on each page, and then for each one we're going to just basically replace them, so we're translating through here. Okay, so back to our English index page. This is the code. It's very short, very simple, but yet you've seen quite effective. So I'm going to pause the video and wipe this, and we're going to start from scratch getting this coded out. Okay, so I've blanked the page. I've kept the English, German and Spanish pages just there, so I don't have to rewrite them. But yeah, all we've got here is our opening PHP and closing PHP tags. So we've got our full set of tags, we've got our first and our second variable, and obviously down here you can add more, and that's going to go in here. So as long as you know where you're putting the variables, once you put them into variables, then you'll be fine. But if you don't understand this, you'll see later on. Okay, so we've got our three pages there. We'll make a start on our index page. Let me just refresh this. Okay, so that's blank now. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, we're going to create a separate PHP tag up here, is we're going to think how we're going to take the input from the HTML form. So we're going to, whatever variable we're going to take from the HTML form is going to go up here. We're going to start our form down here. So if we create our HTML tags, and we'll create some body tags here as well. Okay, we're going to start making a form. We need an action and a method, and then I'm going to end the form. So I've done the structure for the form. The action is going to be the same page, so when we submit this form it's going to go straight back to index.php. And the method we're using is post. It doesn't matter what you use, but post is a lot cleaner. It's not going to show in the URL. Okay, so now what we need to do is just set up, say, a tag. So we're going to say language. And we need something called a select option. So there, this is basically a drop down box, and inside here we have a set of options. So I'm just going to create the option. This is the start of the option, this is the end of the option, so start and end. And for this example, this keyboard is bad. For this example, I'm going to be using 3 languages like I've already shown you. Okay, so we've got our 3 options set up here. The first one is English, the second one is German, and then the third one is Spanish. See if I spell it right. There we are, spelled right. Okay, so obviously this isn't complete at the moment. Let's separate this out just so it looks a bit neater. Okay, so this is our select box here. What we need is a name for this, and I'm just going to call this lang, just to keep things simple. And for each option we need to give each of these tags or drop down selections a value. So obviously what we're going to do is give it the value that's written in the box. This is what's going to be displayed, this is what's going to be passed by the browser. We're going to keep it all in lowercase just to keep things simple. So we've got value, and if you're lazy like me, copy and paste it. So if you don't know how to do this already, this is just simple HTML. So we're just basically setting up our thing. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come into our browser and refresh this just to, let's come back here, just to check that's all working. Yep, we've got our 3 options there. The only thing missing now is the rest of our PHP code and our submit button. So I'm going to type input type, and this is going to be submit. The name is going to be submit. This isn't important, but if you're checking for the submit button later on, this will be. And the value of it is just going to be go. Okay, so we're going to come refresh that again, and you can see that now we can select and click go. It doesn't actually do anything at the moment. Now, you noticed in my first example that we had, let's say we selected German and clicked go. You can see that that's now changed back to English. Now, there is some PHP code that we're going to implement into our HTML form to make this stay at the option that's selected. Say if I was to click go on German, the page translates to German, but the label still stays as English. So we want this to display German as well. Okay, so we'll do that a bit later. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to take the variable from the form, depending on what's selected here. So we've got an option of English, German or Spanish, and the name for this is lang. So if we come up to the top here, we're going to create a variable in PHP called lang, and then we're going to do an underscore, a $sign underscore post, 2 square brackets, and obviously end our line, and then in here in semicolons, not semicolons, sorry, inverted commas, we're going to write post. Sorry, no we're not. We're going to write lang. Okay. So basically this is taking this value here. This here means post, because we're taking post data. If this was get, then we'd change this to get. I do have a tutorial on get and post, so have a look at them if you not sure about what this does or how it will benefit you. And we've saved this inside a variable called lang. Now that's all we need for up here at the moment. The reason I've put this up here on its own inside these PHP tags is because we're going to use it in this form a bit later on. Okay, so come down. Underneath here I'm going to create a new set of PHP tags, and this is where the main code's going to be. It's going to implement these 3 files. Okay, so we're going to use a switch statement. Now a switch statement basically takes something, well, it takes a variable and makes a decision based on this variable. You can use if statements, but it's a lot easier to use switch. It looks a lot cleaner, and it's just generally a lot easier to use. So switch lang, we're basically switching this variable that we've passed up here. Now what we can do actually is scrap that for a minute. I'm going to echo out lang. Now this is going to test what's been passed through the form. So we're submitting this form by clicking on this submit button. It's then reloading the page and taking this variable, and then down the bottom of the page it's going to echo it back out. So let's refresh the page. Okay, so I'm going to choose German, and it's echoed out that. So at the moment it's echoing out the value that we have assigned to the option inside the form. So there we are, and English. You can see that that's working. So obviously because it's coming up with each language individually, we know that now we can switch this variable lang, and we can make a decision based on it. Now I have a tutorial on switch as well, but if you follow along you should get most of the structure of this statement. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to say case, and we're going to say English. Now instead of putting a semicolon, I'm going to put a colon on the end of this, and then I'm going to break here, and the code that we're going to execute if lang equals English is going to go in between here. So what I am in fact going to do is I'm going to include a specific file, and you probably guessed that's this file here. Now if I open up here, you can see that I've put it in a folder called lang, so I've got them files there. So it's going to be lang/english.php. Okay, so now all we've got to really do now is copy this, paste it down. In fact, no, we'll write it each time. Case German, we're going to break, and the code obviously is going to go inside here, and that is going to be include lang Deutsch.php. And a third case, which is our last one. Remember the colon, not the semicolon at the end, and this is going to be okay. And we're going to break that there, and we're going to include this file. So we're doing just a repeat of everything for each language. So we've already echoed this variable out, so now we're switching it, and depending on which one is selected, we're going to include the specific file. And then obviously underneath all this here, we can echo out what we need to, but I'll show you that in a minute. We're just going to test this very quickly. We'll come back onto it. Okay, so at the moment we've got say German. Okay, no error, no error, no error. So we've not received an error at the moment for the includes, so we know that they've been included properly. Another note to make is that we need a default, because if we don't include a language set, we're not going to get anything output on the screen. We need something output on the screen. So I'm going to put a default. Now this is just standard notation. You just need to write default. This is if anything isn't selected. And obviously coming onto the page, first of all, we haven't clicked this button, so we need a default language. So I'm going to choose this as English. Okay. So if we come onto the page, okay, no errors, and we've checked all these already and there's no errors. So just to run through again, what we've done is we've got a form here, a select box, we've got a submit button. We're selecting one of these options and clicking submit, and we're refreshing the form, so it's going straight back to index.php using a post method. We're grabbing this using the post variable here, and we're taking the lang from here, so this is the name of the select box. That's storing it in a variable called lang. So once this page has been refreshed and this variable has been determined, we're going all the way back down here and we're switching this variable, and we're checking if it is English, German or Spanish, and if it is either of them, we're going to include the necessary file, which you've already seen these three here. And by default, if it hasn't selected any of these, i.e. the form hasn't been submitted, it's going to include English. Obviously you can choose any language as the default language. Okay, so underneath here, now that this is all working, we presume that because these have been included, we're going to be able to use anything inside them we want, obviously the specific one. So I've got first and second here. Now the thing you must do is make sure that first and second, or whatever you're going to call your variables, are exactly the same. So we can add another one on there. If I was going to say add third equals something in the Spanish file, in the German one I can't then add third. I mean, you can't start a variable with it with a letter anyway, a number anyway, but I can't say call it third var, because what I'm then doing is I'm going to be echoing out the variable on this page, which is going to be static. So we're going to say first, second or third. So if it was third and we're echoing out third and came to this file, it would be able to echo it out. If it came to this file, it wouldn't find that variable. So these need to be kept the same name. Let's save them out. Okay, so right. Okay, so what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to say echo first. I'm going to concatenate on a line break, and underneath I'm going to say echo second. So now what's going to happen is we've included our file. Make sure this is underneath this switch statement, because we need to obviously include it before we display what's in each one. and we're echoing out first, line breaking, and then echoing out second. So we've got first, second, and first, second, and first, second here. That's why all the variables need to be the same. Now let's come back in and we'll refresh. And nothing's been selected, so we've got hello, my name is Alex. That's the default language. Let's choose German. Okay, that's changed to German. And let's choose Spanish, and that's changed to Spanish. Right, so our language chooser is actually working. The only thing we need to do now is, like I said before, it's a bit annoying that we're clicking on German and it's changing this back to English, because now we do know what language it's on, but it doesn't look right. Okay, so this is very, very simple. We're just going to come up to this main form. Now in here, just after this value here, there can be selected written. Now this basically will select this automatically by default. So if we said had Spanish selected by default, came onto the page, you can now see that this is in English and Spanish is selected. So this means that that has been selected by default. Now we can use a series of if statements for each of these to determine whether this lang variable here matches each one of them. And if it say does match German, that means German is the last language to be selected. Therefore this will print out selected here. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just follow along and I'm sure you'll get it eventually. Okay, so we need to open up some PHP tags. I'm doing this all on one line, so try and follow. I'm going to say if, and I've got obviously my two opening parentheses, and I'm going to say lang equals equals, remember equals equals, we're comparing, English, lowercase, because this is lowercase. Okay, so if that's true, then we're going to open up more parentheses, now curly brackets this time, and I'm going to say echo selected. Okay, so what this is going to do is, in this place inside the HTML, it's going to check the language variable. If it's equal to English, it's going to echo selected out there. So now if we copy and paste this down, all we need to do now is just change these variables here. And this will work for each one. So let's run through this again. We come down, we submit our form, we go back up, we've got our lang variable here, grabs it from our form, we come down, the next thing to happen, obviously apart from the HTML code being displayed, or the result of the HTML code being displayed, we check for the lang variable equaling English. If it does, then we echo selected, so this will print selected just here, and then HTML will interpret that and say, well, now English should be selected. Then we come down and we do the same for German and the same for Spanish, and we come down again, we switch like I've already explained, and then we output what we want. So if I come back onto this, okay, so English by default, we've got our English displayed. I'm now going to select German and click go. You can see that the German has in fact stayed this time. If I right click and click view page source, you can actually see we don't actually have a selected written here. Probably something wrong with the browser, I'd imagine, or how it's been refreshed. But anyway, we can see that it does work. We've got a Spanish there, changes it to Spanish, and the language selection stays at Spanish. Okay, so this has been the language chooser tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you enjoy my other tutorials, please subscribe. You'll get notifications in your email address when I make a new video. And thanks for watching, and more tutorials to come soon. Thanks a lot.